One moment, one sentence, one live feed that never should have stayed on air. That's all it took. Live television is built on control. Countdowns, cues, delays, producers hovering just off camera. But every so often, reality punches straight through the format. And when it does, there's no undo button, no edit, no warning label, just millions of people watching something they were never meant to see. These are the most horrific moments in live TV history, incidents that unfolded in real time, captured on broadcast, and left a permanent scar on viewers, networks, and everyone involved. Christine Chubbuck, Sarasota, Florida. It was July 15, 1974 in Sarasota, Florida. Christine Chubbuck was 29 years old, a television reporter for WXLT-TV, and the host of a local morning talk show called Suncoast Digest. That morning, she wanted to make a point. A brutal one. The studio lights were hot. The cameras were already rolling. This was live TV. No delay, no safety net. Christine opened the show as usual, reading headlines. Her voice was calm, controlled, almost detached. Then she paused. She told viewers that in keeping with the station's policy of bringing them the latest in blood and guts, they were about to see something different, something real. What no one in the control room realized, until it was too late, was that Christine had brought a revolver onto the set. The footage shows her reaching down, lifting the gun, placing it behind her ear. There was no dramatic buildup, no visible hesitation. Just a single pull of the trigger. The sound echoed through the studio. The camera jolted. The broadcast cut to a slide seconds later. But the damage was already done. Viewers at home had watched a reporter take her own life. Live. Crew members rushed in. An emergency call went out immediately. Christine was transported to the hospital, where she was pronounced dead later that day. The official cause of death was a self-inflicted gunshot wound. No criminal charges, no technical malfunction. Just a human being collapsing under pressure in front of a camera. The tape was never rebroadcast. Most copies were destroyed. The network went silent, but the moment never disappeared. In the aftermath, local stations across the country reevaluated live broadcast safety. Delay systems became standard. Mental health conversations, long avoided in newsrooms, were forced into the open. Christine Chubbuck didn't just die on live TV. She changed it forever. But the next death would be even harder to watch, because it didn't come from within the studio. Allison Parker and Adam Ward, Moneta, Virginia. It was August 26, 2015, just after 6:45 a.m., in Moneta, Virginia. Allison Parker was 24 years old, a morning reporter. Adam Ward was 27, her cameraman. They were setting up for a routine live segment on WDBJ7, interviewing a local tourism official near Smith Mountain Lake. The weather was clear. The mood was relaxed. The shot was wide, framed perfectly for broadcast. Viewers watched Allison smile into the lens. She adjusted her posture. She began her introduction. What they didn't realize was that a third person was standing just out of frame. Footage shows the interview starting normally, then suddenly dissolving into chaos. Loud pops. Allison screams. As the camera drops violently as Adam is hit. The image spins, briefly capturing the shooter's legs before the feed cuts. In the control room, producers scrambled. At home, viewers sat frozen, unsure if what they'd just seen was real. It was. The shooter was a former station employee, armed and deliberately targeting the live broadcast. He fled the scene as police rushed in. Allison Parker and Adam Ward were pronounced dead later that morning. The official cause: gunshot wounds sustained during a targeted attack. The shooter later took his own life during a police chase. In the aftermath, the raw footage spread faster than the network could contain it. Social platforms removed clips. Newsrooms across the country issued warnings. Stations reassessed field security and live shot protocols. For many viewers, The shock wasn't just the violence, it was the intimacy. This wasn't a distant tragedy, it was happening to people you were watching live. Morning TV was never supposed to end this way, but live broadcasts don't always end when the segment does. R. Bud Dwyer, Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. It was January 22, 1987, in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. R. Bud Dwyer was 58 years old and the state treasurer of Pennsylvania. He was scheduled to be sentenced the following day on corruption charges he publicly denied. Instead, he called a press conference. Cameras filled the room. Reporters leaned forward. This was a routine political event, live coverage carried by multiple stations. Dwyer stepped to the podium. He looked tired, pale, but composed. He spoke for several minutes, about injustice, about family, about standing by one's name. Then he reached into a manila envelope. What he pulled out wasn't paperwork. It was a revolver. Gasps filled the room. Some reporters shouted. Others froze. The cameras stayed live. Dwyer told people to stay back. He raised the gun, and before anyone could stop him, he pulled the trigger, collapsing behind the podium. The sound, the confusion, the screaming, all broadcast in real time. Some stations cut away immediately, others didn't, either too late or unsure how to react. Emergency responders arrived quickly, but Dwyer was already dead. The coroner ruled the death a suicide by gunshot wound. The aftermath was seismic. Networks were flooded with complaints. News directors faced intense scrutiny over why the footage aired. Delay systems, still rare at the time, became an industry standard almost overnight. And for decades, the clip circulated as a grim warning about live coverage and unchecked assumptions, because no one expected a press conference to turn into a public execution. But sometimes, the most horrifying moments come when danger hides in plain sight. Luis Carlos Galan, rally shooting, Soacha, Colombia. It was August 18, 1989, in Soacha, just outside Bogotá, Colombia. Luis Carlos Galan was one of the most prominent presidential candidates in the country, and one of the most dangerous men alive in the eyes of the drug cartels. He had built his campaign on openly confronting organized crime, promising reforms that threatened billions of dollars and long-standing power structures. That night, he arrived at a campaign rally attended by thousands. Television cameras were already rolling. This wasn't a recorded segment. It was a live political broadcast, transmitted nationwide. The atmosphere was electric. Flags waved overhead. Supporters chanted Galan's name as he walked toward the stage. Security appeared present. Orderly. Sufficient. To viewers at home, everything looked controlled. What they didn't realize was that security had already been breached. As Galan stepped forward and began to speak, gunmen moved through the crowd. The first shots were almost indistinguishable from background noise, until they weren't. Automatic gunfire ripped through the air, echoing across the stage. The footage captures the exact moment reality collapses. Galan jerks backward, struck repeatedly. He falls as people scream and scatter in every direction. The camera shakes violently. The broadcast dissolves into chaos. Audio clipping, bodies running. The image breaking apart before finally cutting out. Emergency responders rushed Galan to the hospital, but his injuries were catastrophic. He died shortly after arrival. The official cause of death was clear. Multiple gunshot wounds sustained during a targeted assassination. The killing sent shockwaves through Colombia and far beyond. Political violence was nothing new, but this was different. A murder wasn't just reported afterward. It was witnessed live, unfolding second by second on national television. In the aftermath, the Colombian government implemented sweeping security reforms for political events. Media outlets reconsidered live coverage protocols. Galan became both a martyr and a warning, proof of how exposed public figures truly were. Live television had captured history, but at a devastating, irreversible cost. The surprise stunt gone wrong, Japan. It was April 2009 during a live variety television broadcast in Japan, one of those high-energy shows built entirely on spectacle. Big reactions, physical stunts, comedians pushed past comfort for laughs. That night's participant was a young performer known for taking risks, someone the audience expected to suffer just enough to make it funny. The set was overwhelming, bright lights, loud music, a studio audience already primed to cheer. Hosts shouted encouragement from the sidelines, feeding the moment. Everything about the atmosphere signaled entertainment, not danger. The stunt itself was designed to look extreme, a physical challenge meant to create tension without real risk. On paper, it was safe, rehearsed, approved. What no one realized was that one critical safety measure had failed. As the challenge began, the performer struggled almost immediately. At first, it blended into the act. Struggle was expected. The audience laughed. The hosts reacted with exaggerated surprise, assuming it was all part of the show. But the seconds kept passing. Footage shows a subtle shift on stage. The performer's movements slow. His responses fade. The laughter becomes uneven. One host steps closer, unsure. Another keeps talking, trying to hold the segment together. Then it becomes obvious something is wrong. Someone rushes forward. The music cuts. The broadcast hesitates. Then abruptly cuts to commercials. Emergency services were called at once. Medics worked behind the scenes, away from the cameras. The performer was pronounced dead later that night. The official ruling cited complications from the stunt, an unintended but fatal outcome. No malicious intent, no criminal charges, just a system that failed at the worst possible moment. The backlash was immediate. Sponsors pulled out. The show was suspended. Japan's broadcasting authorities tightened regulations around live stunts and on-air safety. The footage itself rarely resurfaces, but the lesson stuck. Because when entertainment crosses into danger, the line between comedy and catastrophe disappears fast. The reporter caught in the blast. It was a live breaking news broadcast, the kind viewers barely think twice about. A planned demolition, engineers on site, officials assuring everyone it was controlled, routine, predictable, safe. The reporter stood where he had been told to stand, well outside the danger zone. Hard hat secured, microphone clipped, camera locked on. In the background, minus officials began the countdown, their voices steady, rehearsed. At home, viewers watched calmly, expecting the familiar inward collapse. A clean drop. A neat ending. What no one realized was that the math was wrong. When the charges detonated, the structure didn't fold into itself. It didn't sink neatly into its footprint. Instead, the building lurched, twisted, and then came outward, violently, unpredictably, straight toward the press area. The footage captures the moment everything changes. The reporter is mid-sentence when he turns his head, reacting to a sound that doesn't belong. The roar swells instantly, swallowing his voice. The camera jolts. Dust explodes across the frame. Debris fills the air. Within seconds, the signal collapses into chaos and static. Producers cut away, but it's already too late. Emergency responders rush in almost immediately. Sirens cut through the dust cloud. Crew members shout names. Cameras are lowered, abandoned on the ground. But the impact is catastrophic. There is nothing left to fix on site. The official report would later cite miscalculations in blast radius and safety zoning. The demolition plan underestimated directional force. The safe zone wasn't safe at all. In the aftermath, protocols changed. Media distances were expanded. Networks rewrote their safety policies. Independent verification became standard. Trusting official assurances was no longer enough. For viewers, the horror wasn't just the death. It was how normal everything looked right up until it wasn't. 1 second, it was just another news segment. The next, it was silence. Live television promises immediacy, authenticity, reality. But these moments reveal the other side of that promise, the cost of being there as it happens. No clip is worth a life. No broadcast is more important than safety. And once a moment goes out live, it can never be pulled back. If you want to understand how thin the line really is, watch the next video.